Thanks all of you for being here. I think I'll direct this to Dr. Fauci, but I welcome everybody's answer. I just want to go through what we do know. We've heard a lot about what we don't know. So here are the things that we do know, okay? So SARS-1, we identified the host animal within 4 months. MERS, I believe we identified the host animal within 9 months. It's now been 15 and a half, 16 months. We've still not seen, and China's not produced any evidence of the host animal that transmitted COVID-19 to a human. We know that China has a history of lab accidents. I think, Dr. Fauci, you answered Senator Graham's question. I think he phrased it as, has there ever been a pandemic that came out of a laboratory? And the answer was no. But we do know of outbreaks that came out of a laboratory. I believe back in 2004, 2 researchers in Beijing were infected doing research on SARS and led to an outbreak. China has a history of lab accidents. This outbreak happened in a city that happened to be the home, coincidentally, of a lab which we know is involved in extensive research. And what they do is they take this naturally occurring virus and they manipulate it and they change it to make it infectious to humans. We know that they do that there. They've published about it. And it also happened in a city, in a lab, where a Rutgers biosecurity expert raised concerns about its safety. And our diplomats in 2018 were cabling back to Washington expressing concern about the safety. So I take all those facts together, right? SARS, we knew the host in 4 months. MERS, we knew the host in 9. We still don't know the host for COVID, even though, and China's not being transparent about it, even though they have a vested interest in producing the host, so they can put all those down. In a lab that we know is involved in changing viruses synthetically so that they become infectious for humans, in a lab that diplomats have told us is unsafe, and a country that had a history of lab leaks. And by the way, in a virus that we know can be synthetically created because the Swiss did it. The Swiss created an exact replica of this virus in the lab for purposes of answering it. All of these facts were available to us last May, last April. Why? I'll start with Dr. Fauci. Why did you dismiss the lab leak theory as credible?
I have always said that the high likelihood is that this is a natural occurrence. I didn't dismiss anything. I just said it's a high likelihood that this is a natural occurrence from the environment of an animal reservoir that we have not yet identified. Well, and I still maintain that. But as I just mentioned in response to other questions, that since you don't know 100% about that, because no one knows, including me, 100%, what the origin is the reason why we're in favor of further investigation. Well,
given everything I've decided, and if anything I decided is incorrect, I hope it'll be correct, that I'm relying, obviously it's not my field of study, so I'm relying on what other experts have published. What is the basis for this what is the basis for the conclusion that it is likelier to have been naturally occurring than a lab accident? I asked a specific question to the Director of National Intelligence, and how I posed it is it not true that it is the assessment that they are equally likely based on our information that we have? So as I outline all of these things here, is she wrong when she answered me yes? And based on everything I've just cited, what is it that we're basing the higher likelihood of naturally occurring? Is it simply because that's all we've ever seen in the past?
Well, we have historical experience that happened with SARS-CoV-1. It happened with MERS. It happened with HIV. It happened with virtually all the influenza pandemics. So the historical basis for pandemics evolving naturally from an animal reservoir is extremely strong. And it's for that reason that we felt that something similar like this has a much higher likelihood. But again, getting back to what I said, and let me repeat so there's no lack of clarity in that, no one knows, not even I, 100% at this point, which is the reason why we are in favor of further investigation.
But going back to precedent, the precedents require them to be similar. The difference between this one and that one is, as I said, 4 months we knew the host for SARS, 9 months we knew the host for MERS. China has all the incentive in the world to produce this host and hasn't done so. And then you add up all these other things. I mean, is it just a coincidence that happened in the city that's doing this kind of research, which, by the way, is controversial? I know you and others have been supportive of it, but it's controversial. It's not widely accepted as good. My whole point is there are people out there who had Facebook posts taken down, were called kooks, conspiracy theorists, for saying publicly a year ago what we now say may be possible. And I think those people deserve an apology at a minimum. Thank you.
I now recognize the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Olson, welcome. In America, we shouldn't need to say that parents speaking out about their children's education aren't domestic terrorists, or that those raising concerns about the radical direction the left is trying to take this country are not domestic terrorists, or that Trump supporters aren't domestic terrorists, but apparently we do. Because the Biden administration is bound and determined to demonize anyone and everyone not in lockstep with their far-left agenda. Last September, the Biden White House colluded with the National School Boards Association to orchestrate a letter to President Biden that portrayed concerned parents speaking out at school board meetings as security threats. The letter urged the president to use the Patriot Act to go after America's moms and dads. Just 5 days later, the Attorney General issued a memorandum directing the FBI and U.S. Attorney's offices to address a, quote, disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence at school board meetings. And if you remember, when we had the Attorney General in front of this committee, we asked him about where did they learn about this harassment, this disturbing spike in intimidation? Where did they learn about it? And his response was, from the school board letter that they helped coordinate and put together to send to the White House. The press release that accompanied that memorandum said that Mr. Olson's division, the National Security Division, would be involved in a department-wide effort to target parents. That's right. The division that is supposed to be prosecuting terrorists, protecting us from terrorists, the kind that want to hijack planes and bring down buildings, decided that a priority of this division of the FBI is parents at school board meetings. And oh, guess what? We find out that this whole situation was coordinated. That's right. Like I said earlier, the NSBA letter was a pretext for the memorandum. The letter was instigated by the White House. Documents released by the National School Boards Association show that the White House knew that the letter would urge the administration to invoke the Patriot Act, and the White House raised no objections. In fact, the National School Boards Association admitted that President Biden telephoned the then NSBA president to say that he was appreciative of the letter. When this all came to light and America's parents rightly became outraged, the National School Board Association apologized for its action. The NSBA wrote to its members, quote, "We regret and apologize for the letter." That's a lot more than the Attorney General or the Biden administration has done, because as far as we know, the memorandum is still in place. That's right. As far as we know, the Attorney General's directive to the National Security Division to target moms and dads remains in place. And if this was it, if it was just a political stunt, that would be bad enough. But it's actually much worse. Because of whistleblowers who came forward, we know that the FBI created a threat tag specifically targeting parents, a designation specifically targeting moms and dads. And we know that the FBI opened over 24 investigations into parents merely because they stood up to speak on behalf of their children. We sent countless letters to the DOJ trying to get answers, but have gotten virtually nothing back in response. I'm sure we will have some pointed questions for Mr. Olson today, and I hope that he is prepared to give us answers on the answers our constituents deserve. We also hope he is prepared to talk about the Department of Justice's refusal to address people trying to intimidate Supreme Court justices at their homes and their children's schools. And we have great concerns about the terrorist attacks targeting pro-life facilities and groups around the country. This year, there have been dozens of attacks on these facilities, but the Biden administration seems preoccupied with other politically charged investigations. We'd also like to know why the DOJ is ignoring all the facts coming to light regarding the business dealings and illegal activities of Hunter Biden. In fact, a troubling pattern has come to light recently that indicates the Biden Justice Department seems more focused on politics than it is on fighting crime. And don't forget, this is the division of the Department of Justice that we entrust with immense surveillance powers. The chairman mentioned his reference to FISA. Within the National Security Division is the Office of Intelligence. This office is responsible for preparing and filing all applications pursuant to FISA, as well as appearing before the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. Of course, we all know about the FISA abuses over the past several years and how the Department of Justice and the FBI misused FISA to target the campaign of President Trump. Mr. Olson has been entrusted with a great deal of responsibility. It's our hope that today he's come prepared to answer a great deal of questions this committee has about the Department of Justice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.